to another episode of Inside the Recording Studio. I am Jody Whitesides, and with me as always is Mr. Chris Hellstrom. How are you today, Chris?
I am really excited today.
Oh.
I am pumped.
Yes?
Because you can guess why. We have a very special guest with us today.
Yeah. Are you like sporting wood already or something, or what?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Right. Well, who's our special guest?
Well, we have with us Steve Ouimette today.
Yes.
Session guitar player and everything else in between. Well, he has a very illustrious career, actually. So
yes, he does.
I think what I think we'll do, Steve, if you don't mind. First, welcome to the podcast. We very much look forward to this. To people who don't know who you are, perhaps we can start by you explaining a little bit of your background and what you do today.
Yeah, I guess I got my start. I've been doing this my whole life, but my start in the world of the public eye, I believe, would have been with Guitar Hero back in 2007. It was actually my first gig after getting laid off from AOL. Remember those guys?
I did not know you worked for AOL.
Yeah, well, it's a long story. I'll get into that. I got laid off from AOL. Of course, there is no AOL to get laid off from anymore, but so joke's kind of on them.
You were ahead of the curve, really.
Yeah. And so I realized that I'd been doing music my whole life. I mean, I got my degree in classical performance and composition, and I was going to be a rock star like a lot of the guys were expecting we were going to be, and it didn't work out exactly that way. And then after I went through the whole tech business side of things, when I was working with game composers as well as a lot of back-end stuff you don't need to hear about, I ended up looking for, I wanted to write music for video games, and I went to a conference, which is called the Game Developers Conference.
GDC.
GDC.
Been there.
And I'm so old, it used to be called the Computer Games Developers Conference before it turned into GDC. So, yeah.
CDGC.
And a friend of mine introduced me to this guy named Kai Huang, who was running Red Octane and Guitar Hero. And that's how I got my first gig. I ended up writing, I don't know, maybe I did probably about 10 re-records for Guitar Hero 3 and then some custom tracks, and it all goes on from there. So that's the longest intro of a How Did I Get Here ever for your podcast.
Not at all. That's great. But I think you skipped something there.
I'm sure I did.
Yeah. Not necessarily when it comes to the Guitar Hero, but unless he's lying to me, Jody informed me that you were also part of T-Ride and did some work for that record.
Yeah. That was I was going to be a rock star. So
he didn't really skip it. He just glossed over it.
Yeah, I just I'll rewind. So I met Eric Valentine back in 1988 when I had kind of joined a studio-ish band with a great singer named Dave Candelaria, and Dave brought me into the studio where there was this young guy. I mean, basically we were the same age, but he was this amazing engineer already, and he was recording our demos, and that was Eric. And what happened was throughout the course of the next few years recording with Dave at Eric's studio, I'd been playing guitar. That was what I was doing, obviously. And there was this band that they were creating called T-Ride. And they said, hey, we've got this opening for a track called Rock and Roll Zombies from Hell. And there's this sort of crazy arpeggiated intro that we haven't been able to get the way that we want it to sound. And I guess they had had an open audition for anyone who could play this thing that Eric wrote on, or actually Dan wrote on his Casio keyboard, that, they'd buy him like a free Jack in the Box and a few hours of studio time. So I said, I'll give it a shot. And so I came in the next Monday and recorded that lick, which is sort of pseudo-famous because...
it is crazy as hell.
It was a really interesting, and I have to say that Eric was really cool about it because I didn't quite have it, but he worked with me, and that's one of Eric's skills back then was he was very much a cheerleader for you, and so he helped me get through that lick, and then he actually recorded his drum fill over the top of my lick, which was, that's how good he is. But yeah, so I was in the band for about a year and a half, more on the studio side, and then when it came down to touring, Jeff Tyson was actually in the band before me, and he was really the right guy to tour. I was much more of a can we just like go home after this? Like I didn't want to get in a station wagon and ride around the country. So,
hence the reason why I did not meet you at the Salt Lake gig.
That's right. You did not, because you met Jeff.
That's right.
Jeff, I still stay in touch with actually all the guys. And Jeff is as we all know, phenomenal player, Satriani student.
Yes.
And he's got these spider fingers that he'll dent frets with that left hand. He's just such a great player. But that was my illustrious beginning into the career. And after the T-Ride thing sort of ended, I went into the tech business because I actually wanted to make some money.
There you go. I got to interject real quick, though, because the three of us are all like super guitar nerds. And I will have to say that Jeff also is a super guitar nerd, at least the night I met him on tour.
Oh, yeah, of course he is. Yeah. He's also amazingly skilled at being able to just plug into a pedal and sound just like Jeff. I'm completely, I'm at the whim of whatever gear I'm playing, and I will play horrible if it's not set up just perfect for me. So never ask me to get up and jam, because I will just say no. I don't jam.
There you go.
Yeah. But that's an interesting point that you kind of bring up there, though, because I'm with you on that when it comes to your sound. Like it needs to feel good. It's that comfort factor, right? And you go like, well, can you plug into, whatever backline? Yeah, you probably can, but you're probably not going to play your best because you're kind of holding back because it feels weird.
Well, right? Yeah, you're not even holding back. It's like it's holding you back. You just it's incredibly hard to play. I mean, maybe I can do Malcolm Young, and that's not saying Malcolm isn't like the most amazing rhythm guitar player ever. It's just that if I try to do anything pyrotechnic wise, forget it. There's just I'm totally at the whim. So
you had obviously some studio experience, and describing your personality here, it sounds like doing what you do now almost sounds to me like it fits you like a glove, because you get to do that and you get to explore sound and you get to just really do that on a super microscopic level, if you will, doing what you do for the Guitar Hero games, right?
Yeah, I mean, really what it was is that after the T-Ride thing, I had a home studio before, 4-track and then an 8-track, and then I went through the whole ADAT Mackie thing, and then I bought it. It was horrible. It sounded great for the first track, and then it just fell apart after that. And then Pro Tools wasn't quite there, so I had a studio all the way through. And when I lived in Seattle and I was working on campus at Microsoft, I was recording guys. And I realized quickly that I didn't enjoy recording other musicians at all. But yeah, I had this whole basement studio set up, and it was terrible. It was always cold, and I had to get out of there. Yeah, so I had been recording for many, many years before Guitar Hero. And just before Guitar Hero, I had done this tribute band with some amazing players. So I had Troy Lucetta was my neighbor. The drummer from Tesla was my neighbor here in Scottsdale. Yes. And then I met Dave Henzerling, who is actually known before as David Michael Phillips, as the guitar player for King Cobra. But he's like a walking encyclopedia of any musical part. So he actually ended up playing bass in this band. And then Robert Mason, who sings for Warrant now and had sung for Lynch Mob and some other bands, we all became really good friends, and we put together this band, which was a very accurate version of a band that never existed. So we looked like we were from the 70s. We had the gear from the 70s, but we played cover songs in hey, Cobo Hall burned down, and we had to bring all of our gear to this little place. So we would have, on any given night, we would have 12 cabinets, 412 cabinets, and 12 heads. So it's 4 Orange 412s, 8 Marshall 8 412s, and then matching heads for each cabinet. And so it was hilarious. And so that awesome. Really, and so, we were doing this thing to be as accurate as possible. And I think that prepped me for Guitar Hero, because when I talked to the guys at Guitar Hero, I thought they were looking for note trackers. Right. And I thought, great, I totally could do note tracking because I'm into transcribing and whatnot. And they said, hey, we're in need of covers because our supplier isn't able to get them fast enough for the game. So I auditioned with Schools Out, which ended up on the game. And that's when they opened it up for me to do more songs. And that was like the gate opener of all gate open. I mean, to have that as your first gig coming into the business, it couldn't have been better.
Right.
I hear that.
I mean, really? Guitar Hero 3? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, any games you worked on? Yeah. This one.
I wish I could say the same thing. No, I cannot say that I worked on Guitar Hero. But some people have heard the games I've been on.
Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of games people haven't heard of that I've played on a lot of games. So yeah.
Very cool. So how has, if at all, that process sort of evolved over the years? Now, I mean, we're talking, you said 2007, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a minute.
Yeah, it sure has. Is
it basically the same process for you now, or is it much more nuanced, I would say, today as it was then?
It's funny. You know how bands, sometimes their first album is their best album because they didn't know better, or they had it. I think there are certain songs that still were really, really inspired. I think I've done around 300 covers now. And
Jeez.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was way in my wheelhouse. I mean, we're talking about Scorpions, Pat Benatar, Blue Oyster Cult, that kind of, the Guitar Hero stuff. And so it was right up my alley. And I had a really great team of people. So I had Ryan Green was mixing and producing locally here. And then Gary Sanchez was a drummer that was in a band called Metalhead with Robert Mason. And so he played all the drums on those covers except for a few where a drummer named John Covington was playing, good friend of mine. But over time, it went away from rock, and the majority of my re-records have been on Just Dance, which is not rock. So, I mean, I'm doing everything from old school Harry Belafonte to actual recent pop dance hits. I can't say the name of the two songs that I did for the new upcoming Just Dance, but I mean, I've done everything from Elton John to This Is the Rhythm of the Night, if you remember that from back in the day, with Jenny B. And I actually got Jenny B., the original singer, to sing on the cover.
Nice.
That's a career highlight. So it's become much, much more nuanced because now it could be any song. It could be anything, and I've opened it up to being able to do any kind of music. So I don't really get to do rock as much as I used to unless it's a session, because there hasn't been a Guitar Hero or a rock band or a rock revolution for 10 years now, right?
Yeah, the landscape has definitely shifted. And I remember, because I was teaching at the time when the explosion, if you will, of Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to sort of see that, because I think one thing that happened was like people got the completely wrong idea of what it was to play guitar.
Yeah,
because they came into, I'm really good at Guitar Hero. It's like, okay, well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I can push buttons too. This is quite different.
Yeah, but it also did turn a lot of people onto the instrument.
It sure did.
Or any instrument, where it's like at that point, it was all of a sudden you see kids wanting to learn how to play Sweet Child of Mine again.
Right. Right. Like, I mean, it opened up an entire generation to an era of music that they may not have been exposed to.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely instrumental, no pun intended, to the new movement. And you see the results of it on YouTube now with younger guys and girls playing extremely well, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
at
it's
a very
no
young
joke.
age, too.
At a very young age.
The guy that makes this guitar right here, who's made quite a few of my guitars, as you guys can see, that not the people on the podcast can see, he was hired to do special edition guitars for Guitar Hero.
Really?
And then something did not go right,
oh.
which is unfortunate. Oh. But it was just an interesting connection to hear, like, knowing that you've done a lot of these tracks, and then the guy that actually built a lot of my guitars, he was asked to build some special guitars for that situation.
That's pretty amazing. I know that at one point Fender was involved with Rock Band. And was Gibson involved with Guitar Hero? I can't remember.
I don't recall.
There was a lot of things going on. I mean, they'd put out a lot of games. I did every Guitar Hero until the end. So I did all the way through Warriors of Rock. So that was the last one. And I got to live out a dream that Gene Simmons was the voiceover for the music that I wrote for the Underscore. I didn't get to meet him. I know. I was like, when they told me that he came into Neversoft, and I'm like, that's when I wished I'd lived in LA, because here I am in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Gene Simmons is doing voiceover, and I kind of wish that I had been there for that.
That's a quick plane ride. Why didn't you go?
I didn't. They told me after the fact.
Oh, those Cheap bastards.
I'm like, what are you guys?
Well,
come on, man.
And knowing what I know about you and such is that you are a massive Kiss fan.
Yes.
So it would have been like
I should qualify that.
Yes.
I need to qualify that I'm a massive Kiss fan from 73 to 79.
Okay.
78 to be fair. And the reunion. And I mean, when I say reunion, I mean the one that happened in 96, not the one that's still going on. I mean, I love Kiss and everything, but my first Kiss concert was Dynasty, 1979. And so I had grown up, I'm still a kid at that point, but I had seen the gatefold of Alive 2, and that's what I was expecting when they came for Dynasty. And I was treated to half stacks and a white stage, and I was like, what happened?
Yeah,
it's not the same Kiss that, you know.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, again, I'm a huge Kiss fan as well.
Yeah.
My first concert was Unmasked when they toured in Europe.
Okay.
And it was a very similar stage setup. It was that ramp around. And at that point, I mean, I was also very young, but they couldn't have done anything wrong as far as I was concerned. But that's when color started coming into the uniforms and all that kind of stuff.
The Kiss-capades came to town. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It was just, when they all had their own, you know, Ace had purple, or Ace had blue, Paul had purple, Peter had green, and Gene had red. And it was like, hey guys, this feels a little Vegas-y, you know. I mean, they were dangerous and scary, and then all of a sudden they were super Kiss, and it was like, oh. And then Van Halen came out, and I saw them like 3 weeks after, and it was like, uh-oh, I think I'm changing my mind here. You know? This is a whole different thing. Anyways, I digress.
Well, we're all huge Kiss fans here.
Yeah.
So, so to steer this back a little bit onto sort of like perhaps the process here of what you do. So now, knowing what I know about you and your work, Eric, there is a ridiculous amount of detail going into reproducing one of these tracks.
Yeah.
Can you give us sort of like the short version of what that might look like? You get assumingly contracted to do, hey, we want tracks 1 through 10 or what have you.
Yeah, right.
Now, what does that look like for you when you get that call?
Okay, well, let me use the brief from Ubisoft. So let's say Just Dance is happening. I've done the last 11 Just Dances, so it's every year it happens. So right around November or so, I'll get an email from my guy at Ubisoft, and he'll say, okay, the first track is going to be X, and they'll send me a brief, and the brief is, it's usually the same, which is we want it to be a beat matched, you know, tempo matched, note for note replica. And of course, we all know that that's near impossible. But the idea is that they're going to use the original one to choreograph to, and then they're going to put mine in. And usually it's because of, you know, for licensing, they have to go through, there's a lot of details that I don't know about that they have to do to prepare for it so that they can say, yeah, go ahead and do that, Steve. So when I get it, I do a tempo map. And I use Studio One, so I will accurately map out to the beat, 4 beats for every bar. I'll do a tempo map, and then I start doing my research, which is so much easier now than it was for Guitar Hero because the internet has everything now. Right. And I'll find out what studio it was recorded at, who are the players if it was a session, and I'll learn everything I can. Hey, what kind of mixing console? Who is the engineer? And I'll start going through. And these days, if you're lucky, you might be able to find an isolated track or two. And that can be really helpful because it gives you clues. You know, hey, that's the kind of reverb they're using. So I'll literally break it down into the chords, the rhythms, and then I'll start looking for the players. And usually it's the end result is I just have to find the best singer that can qualify for it. So that ends up being the hardest part for me. The easiest part is tempo mapping and then kind of digging into the track. And I use different tools to isolate parts. I'll use RX from Isotope, or I'll use Transcribe. Yeah. You know, it's true. You know, you have to find as many ways as possible to isolate the instruments. Well, and Transcribe is
the one that you're probably referring to is Music Rebalance in Isotope.
Music Rebalance?
Yeah.
Yes.
That actually does a really pretty good job of taking things apart.
It does, and that's actually relatively new. Most of the time, I just get a stereo track, and I would just listen as intently as possible. And I do have a partner that I've worked with for the last 10 years. His name's Cat Gray, amazing musician and a great friend. And he is a drummer, a bassist, a keyboardist, and everything, and a great singer. So when it came to doing like Earth, Wind, and Fire, he had actually played with the guys in Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so
he knew the parts.
And he knew, not only did he know the parts, he sounded like Maurice when he sang. He played the drums like the way they were played. So that, and we have an amazing group of players all throughout the world that if I need something specific, I know who to get in touch with. But most of the time I'll play some of the keys, all the guitars, the bass, and then, whatever else happens. But it is a kind of a step-by-step process. And then you just keep going back and forth until it kind of gets to that point where you go, okay, I have everything. And then there's a whole other, the mix stage.
Sure. And in a perfect world, how long is that process?
It depends on how much time they give me. I like to have a month if I can, but a lot of times I'll have more than one in process. So, if I have a month, I kind of bounce back and forth between the tracks. Sometimes I have more time.
Are you saying a month per track or a month per brief?
Per track.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, usually for Just Dance, I'll have anywhere between 5 and 8 or 10 to do. So it'll get narrowed down. Sometimes they'll call and say, hey, look, we really need this in the next 2 weeks. And then I have to scramble.
Wow. It's a huge undertaking. Just getting into that. And I would assume that it would have taken you a fair bit of work to kind of establish your workflow and find what kind of works and how to kind of break it down. And
I think that, it did. It took some time. I learned a lot during Guitar Hero. Then I learned a ton during Rock Revolution from Konami. That one didn't do very well, but I did 55 covers in 6 months for that game.
Ooh, that sounds like a heavy schedule by comparison to what you like to do now.
Yes, let's just say that I was doing it because when it was offered to me, I had 20 songs on the game and I had 6 months, and then the other guy dropped out.
Oh.
And I said, I'll take them, like a fool. I'll take them, so that didn't, I will never do that again. Yeah. I think I stayed in bed for a week after that was over. It was
probably well deserved.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true.
That generally tends to happen when you overwork yourself on any project. Yeah, I know I can say close to the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so when it comes to now, obviously you say you're working a little bit more on the pop side, shall we say, as opposed to like the really guitar-driven type of stuff. Yeah,
it's tended to be that, yeah.
Right. How much of a deep dive do you go into? Because we have, like you said, everything is available online as far as, we use this keyboard or we use this and this and that. How meticulous do you get as far as research on what keyboards might have been used, like recreating patches, that type of thing? Or is that something that do you tend to offload that to somebody who might have keyboard as their primary instrument? Or does that,
like for instance, when it comes to keyboards, when I'm talking about keyboards, I think of classic keyboards. Like if you're talking about 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, Cat Gray is by far the most knowledgeable of any person I've ever met. This guy has got cassette backups for his patches. He has so many keyboards, I can't even believe it. So he knows everything about it. He played
backups.
You remember
data
those?
Cassettes? Yes, I do remember
cassettes.
Those as a tiny child. Yes.
Yeah. Well, he was the keyboardist for Prince during the Purple Rain tour.
I'm sorry, I have to ask because Cat is the same Cat that used to teach at MI in Hollywood.
Correct, and that is correct.
I remember I had some classes with him that I studied.
Oh, you
there.
did?
Yeah. And he was, I really quickly veer off, but he deserves like all the credit in the world because I remember his timing was ridiculous. Where most people would, after a while, feel relatively comfortable feeling 16th notes, right? You can feel that. He had the same feel for playing 32nd notes.
Yeah.
And that was just like, oh my God, that's just like different level stuff,
Yeah, Cat is from another planet, and he actually, aside from being a great friend, he was key in my development. He's a true mentor in the sense that micro timing and the level of detail. He was the first guy that I ever met that was as hardcore as me, but he took it to a level that I didn't understand yet. And whenever I think I figured, I've seen the best of his abilities, he'll do something and it's an offhand thing or whatever. And you go, I've had enough of this. I already had one Eric. I had one Eric Valentine in my life already, so to have a second is pretty amazing. So just when you think you're doing pretty good, you've got these guys to put you in check.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, Kat, whenever I'm doing a track, I'll say, hey, what do you think this is? And immediately he'll say, well, that's an OBX, whatever. And he'll go into the details and say, I have a patch from my real one. And so, yeah, that has been something the internet never has. And I will tell you this, the other thing is that these days, they're much harder to do a current song than an old song for the reason that they have everything at their fingertips now. How would you ever know how someone came up with a sound? It may have been based on an Arturia version of a model of something, then run through how many different potential processes that we have. I mean,
or
before
even
it used to be
together with another synth on top of it.
Forget it. Yeah, I did the last Just Dance. I did Till the World Ends, the Britney Spears song, and I was able to get very close to that, but I guarantee you that I did not do it the way that they did it.
Sure,
because it's not like you plug in a Fender Rhodes and you run it through a Leslie or any of the sort. Now it's anything goes.
Yeah.
And so it's easier in a sense to do older songs than newer songs, but the process has definitely gotten much more intense over time.
Sure. Yeah. Well, here's a question in regards to that, especially when it comes to doing synths and maybe talking older synths. Mm-hmm. Are you a member of, say, Roland Cloud?
I am.
Okay.
I am a member.
So anytime Kat says, hey, if it's this Roland blah, 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 you go to Roland Cloud and just pull it up from there because they still have everything and it's now digital as a plugin.
Yeah, I do. Or I just say, hey, you know what it is. Do you want to do it? And, and we've collaborated for, like I said, for the last 10 years. So, sure. I mean, sometimes when I get it and I think I've got it, you're talking about this 30-second note ability that Kat has. It's not even that. It's he was using an RMX 16 on this and it was panned slightly 30% this way. And then it was, that sounds to me like a DBX 160, probably followed by an LA2A or, and you're just like, oh, it's not an 1176. No, it's an 1176, but it's a Rev E. No, it's a Rev D. I can tell. So, and but I'll tell you what. The thing that's crazy about that is all of those little details add up
to making that sound.
Exactly. So it's a never-ending lesson for me, and something that just when I think I've gotten close, there is 100 more things that I could have done to make it closer. So I actually I'm much harder on the details than I was. And sometimes I wonder if it makes you lose out on the straight energy of the track. And I will actually default to something that sounds and feels better than being technically perfect, because you're always in the end trying to make music. So it has to feel good. Try tuning Robert Plant sometime. It doesn't work.
Yeah. No, I think
somebody did do that on the internet.
Yeah, and it didn't work.
No, it's awful.
Yeah. It sounds terrible.
But I think that's an interesting lesson in there, because I was immediately struck by two things where you said there that, first of all, you default to something that feels better, that has the energy, as opposed to being technically correct. And I think that's a lesson that all sort of like engineers and things can learn from, because what really is technically correct, even if you're not trying to match something, it has to have the emotional content of the track, right? And if you lose track of that, we can get into a little bit of troubled waters, I think. Yeah. And I think the second thing that I wanted to mention again, or sort of reiterate, is that you said that when you think you kind of have this down and you realize you're learning something else or something new. Yeah. That's kind of like part of the beautiful process, though, because we realize that we're never done. Right? No. We can only get refined and our focus shifts a little bit. So I think it is a wonderful world that we live in. We have all these tools, but sometimes we can perhaps get too caught up in our old technical heads, and we kind of lose the patience, as it were, when we're mixing. So
yeah, I think that, back when we were using tape and mixing boards, you had to use your ears. There was nothing to look at. You didn't see the waveforms. You didn't, you were definitely in a different place than you are now. And we have the ability to get under the microscope. So sometimes you kind of have to walk away. I think taking breaks is probably one of the best things, because you might be there and you might think everything is right, and you walk away, come back a half hour later, and it's like, wow, that is not right at all, or I need to fix this, and I was totally focusing on the wrong part. So
speaking of taking a break, let's take one right now, and we'll be right back. Chris, what's your next question?
No, we talked about sort of like the overarching kind of a thing of how the process might work. Now, I want to go back to a little bit more heavier on the guitar works, if you don't mind.
No.
So we talked briefly the other day, and you mentioned the aux box from UA. Can you tell us a little bit about how the recording gear or the gear acquisition or the use of the gear has changed over the years from UA? Because you mentioned that piece that has really kind of helped you out.
That's changed everything.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sound like a UA commercial here, because that's...
Well, I paid for all my UA stuff, so we can say whatever I want.
That's Jody's job.
Yeah, that's my side of things. I'm a UA guy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a UA guy too, but I just bought it all. So I run the Apollo X8P, and I got the aux a couple of years ago. Here's the thing. I'm in a one-room studio. When we recorded the Guitar Hero stuff, it was at a proper studio in that they had a live room that we would record the guitars through, put the cab in the room. And it's always been really difficult to get great guitar tones for me with the amps that I like, because I like real amps. And
don't we all?
Yeah, well, I know you guys like direct too.
Yeah.
And I've used all sorts of modeling amps. In fact, little known is that for The Devil Went Down to Georgia, that all those guitar solos was Amp Farm.
Yes.
Ooh.
Amp Farm or Pod Farm?
Amp Farm.
Precursor to Pod Farm.
You got to go back to TDM DSP Farm style. Yeah, so we actually, because there were 3 different guitarists on that, it was me, Ed DeGennaro, and Jeff Tyson. When we were trading solos, I said, just send it, put whatever you need, but give me a DI, and I'm going to reamp everything. Well, I didn't reamp in the end. I ended up using Amp Farm because it sounded great for what we were doing.
Sure.
I don't usually do that for anything that goes out in the public at this point or for a game. I still use a real amp head, but I use the aux. And I have had all sorts of attenuators. I mean, I've had the Fryette Power Station, which is amazing. I had the Rivera Rock Crusher, which is amazing. But all of them still required sound to be coming out in the room.
Sure.
And so when the aux came about and I could load everything down, I've never been happier, because it still feels like the amp is live with a speaker. You don't get that dead blow hammer feel where the pick just doesn't bounce or anything. And it sounds like it's going to sound through my studio monitor. So I'm playing the song and I can put it at any volume I want, and it still sounds like the completed image of what I want it to sound like, and you can tweak it, but it does print that sound, although I'll always print a DI just in case I want to reamp it again.
So what are you using to split the signal when you do that? Are you coming out of the Apollo into the aux and back in, or are you splitting ahead of that?
I'm using a Little Labs PCP distro.
Okay.
So that's in my rack, and I can reamp with that too. And then whenever I do DI, I don't use the Apollo. I use the Undertone Audio MP-DI4. That's Eric Valentine's company. And I figured if you're going to buy something, buy it from a guy who's going to use something like, he built his own freaking console because he didn't think the Neve was good enough anymore.
Okay, go Eric.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
So...
Oh, that's
Eric.
Amazing. Yes.
I could use a Neve, but I have some thoughts.
Well, that's him. He says, I love the way that the Neve does this, and I love the way that the API and the SSL do these things, but I really want... And so he built his own thing with Larry Jasper, and now, of course, I don't know if you've heard this, but now he just bought a 125-acre farm or something in Vermont with his wife.
North. Yeah.
Yeah, he's built this giant thing that's the size of freaking Abbey Road in his backyard. Now they're doing concerts there. He's got a lot. It's just, that guy.
Good for him. Man.
No, he's doing very well. And if I'm not mistaken, did he also get some Fairchilds modified or rebuilt?
Oh, he makes his own.
Yes.
He makes the Unfairchild.
That's what it is.
Which is the greatest name ever for a Fairchild copy. So and he made he's talking about feed forward and feedback compression my brain just kind of starts getting kind of melty when I'm around him for too long.
What about on the guitar front, though? I mean, because I believe I know the answer to this, but how meticulous do you go about when you've done research on players and what you use?
I'll buy the guitar. I will find an excuse to buy the guitar that they used. And if I can't buy the guitar that they had, I will borrow it or I will modify one of mine to have the same pickups, string, action, the guitar cable, the tubes that they used in their amps. I'll do everything that I possibly can. In fact, I've gone so far as I was doing a Barry Manilow track, Copacabana.
Oh, wow.
And I found out that the guitar player was using the small stone, and it was a V1 small stone. So I had to go out and get that particular pedal, and I can tell you that they were not made very well, but they sound different than the new ones. And so, yes, I go all the way. My wife always gets a kick out of it because I finally have the career that allows me to be the kid in the bedroom that always got everything that he wanted. So it's like a circus here. It's like this constant revolving door of gear coming in one door and out the other. I need an entire separate facility just to hold on to the gear because I have too much of it, but I can't let some of it go because I need it, and I though I don't need it, I need it.
Sure.
That's that GDS that we talked about. Gear derangement syndrome.
Yeah, it's not even acquisition; it's derangement at this point. I mean, I just started looking into fuzz pedals, and I'm starting to find these pedals are going for like $1,700-$1,800 for these.
The Klon? Are you going after a Klon?
The Klon's $5,500 overdrive, and that's a joke. I mean, it's not. It's a great pedal. Bill Finnegan did a great job, but everyone else is the one that's responsible for making it into something. It's the blues lawyers, and I'm not going to go any farther than that.
Yeah, we already
mentioned them a week or two
ago.
Oh,
okay, good.
Yeah. No, what's the old joke? They're pretty much the only one propping up the retail industry when it comes to musical gear.
You got that right.
Point, right? Yeah.
That's why that last Les Paul cost me $8,000.
Oh, good God.
Wow. And
business expense.
Who does your insurance on all your gear?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Allstate. I'm in the good hands.
So it's not even with like your PRO. It's Allstate.
No, man, it's straight up. I got a marine inland insurance policy. Believe me, fire, water, everything.
Earthquake.
Theft. Yeah, I have it. Even though we don't get them much here out, in Arizona.
Sure.
Good for you. So one question I wanted to ask you, you've kind of already answered it. I want to ask it again anyway.
Yeah.
So when you're recreating these tracks, getting the sound right versus the performance, which one always trumps?
I don't have a one or another on that. The performance is key, and you can manipulate a good performance to more mirror the original performance, but you cannot make a bad performance. It just doesn't work. So I mean,
it has to be reasonably close, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Look, put a mic anywhere near Paul McCartney, and it's going to sound good. Right. But put a great mic in front of somebody who doesn't have the Paul McCartney vibe, and you're in trouble. So I mean, You're in Trouble. That's a fetish film I always thought would be a funny one to make. You heard it. That's it. You're in trouble. You're in trouble. But anyway, that's the rated R version.
So here's a question for you then, going for the meticulous aspect and using certain tools. This is going to sound kind of bizarre, but maybe you take a track apart using RX Music Rebalance, and you're getting your guitar part separated from your bass and your drums and your vocals and whatnot.
Yes.
Then you get a performance that's reasonably close, and your Music Rebalance plugin has pulled out the original performance of the part that you're recording, and it's relatively close. Do you go in with, say, Vocaline or Revoice Pro and then have it realign everything if it's slightly off?
I do it by hand.
You do it by hand?
Never used. Okay. Yeah, I've never used a program that didn't have too many artifacts.
Sure.
It's great. I think Vocaline is amazing. However, it's that Cat Gray thing again. Once you start doing it by hand, it's that extra attention to detail versus an algorithm that you can't do yet.
You know what? Okay, so funny you mentioned that. And I just brought that up to just see if those, like, along the lines of the tools that you might be using. But another mutual friend of ours, Mr. Robert Navarro.
I love Robert.
Yes. He, when he was learning Logic and wanting to do timing correction using flex time, he was constantly trying to use the automated version of it.
Right,
whereas,
without the markers and all that.
Yeah, where the markers were automatically dealt with and all that kind of thing. And bless Apple for adding this to Logic's capabilities. However,
it's good to get you in the ballpark.
Yes, but it is not as good as somebody who has the ear and the talent to know exactly where that hit is, and then to use your own flex markers in there.
Yeah.
And drag it through where it is exactly where it's supposed to be. So it's interesting that you do it by hand, because obviously that does take longer.
Yeah, it does. But it's worth it in the end.
Of course.
Think that, in the end, everything that you do in this business stays available forever, right? I mean, the internet, everything is forever. And so everything that I do, I absolutely try to do it to the utmost that I can within the time constraints I have.
Sure.
Because it represents what you're doing. And forget about all of that for a second. You have to be respectful to the artist. And the original artists, the original producers. Now, again, in a sense, I don't really know. I've never actually spoken to an artist that I've done a re-record about, with that has had anything negative to say. But then again, I don't know how they feel about it. I know that there were lawsuits from like the band, the Romantics. They sued for their likeness when a re-record was too close to them.
Wow.
And I thought that was interesting. So that hasn't happened to me yet.
I'm assuming that your contracts actually cover that kind of shit.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're working on a project of, a Guitar Hero or a Just Dance level, they dot their I's and cross their T's. They're not doing anything that isn't legitimate. And this is all, believe me, you don't do anything until there's a green light from the lawyers.
Sure. Now, here's another question for you, because I don't know the answer to this, but being that you worked on several of these guitar-type games, are you somebody that recreated Metallica stuff, like the infamous Death Magnetic album, I think it was, where the album was so crushed, but the game version was like much nicer in terms of actually hearing the parts?
I worked on Guitar Hero Metallica, but I did the underscore for the game. I did the cutscenes and the underscore. All of the original songs were, the original recordings.
Oh, so they actually got the
used
rights.
To say, yeah, they were, Metallica. Yeah, it's like Aerosmith. Guitar Hero Aerosmith was the same way. They used all the originals. In fact, it's Joe Perry's son's fault that my version of Same Old Song and Dance did not end up on Guitar Hero 3. I say this jokingly, but I guess Joe Perry's son was playing Guitar Hero, and he said, "Dad, you guys should be on this." And he's like, what is this? And so I was in the middle of recording Same Old Song and Dance, and Activision called and they said, "You can go ahead and stop. We
got the rights to the original tracks.
Because they want the original." And I'm like, well, all right, that's fair enough. And
sure.
So I've always wanted to say that publicly, that it's Joe Perry's son. I got it out to him.
Damn him. I've got some fun stories from a guy named Steve White. Are you familiar with him?
Steve White. Yeah, I know Stephen White. He was my guitar tech. No.
Session guitar player from way back in the day. Coke bottle type glasses. We'll talk about it off air, because I don't want to repeat some of the things that he's told me personally.
Okay.
So, but I think you'll get a kick out of it based on what I just heard.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So let's say that a little birdie told me to ask you to mention perhaps something with some Megadeth tracks. Is this something that we can talk about, or is this?
I can talk about it to a degree. Yeah, there was a time when I was working on Rock Revolution, the Konami game. Let's just say I was working on the song, and between me and a few of the guys at the studio, we were able to get a version of the song musically that sounded like you couldn't tell the difference between the original and what we had. It was very, very, very close. Although I will say that I was doing double chores. I was doing Dave Mustaine and Marty Friedman too. Like, these guys are not easy to,
Yeah.
Sure.
Marty Friedman.
Well,
thank you. Well, listen to the song sometime. You'll understand why I'm sad about this. I was so focused on the music, and we were just so excited because everything sounded just great. And then we needed to get a Dave Mustaine voice.
We'll leave you with this cliffhanger. Our interview with Steve Ouimette continues in the next episode.